Hey everybody, welcome back. You need to review all the required documents for AP Gov and don't have time? I got you. Smash that like button and let's pretend like we did some reading. First up, the Declaration of Independence. We view the Declaration as establishing the ideals of US government, like limited government, natural rights, social contract, and popular sovereignty. Best of all, we can accomplish all of this in just 2 sentences from the Declaration. First, we hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Something that's unalienable can't be taken away. This is Jefferson's version of natural rights, which are fundamental rights that all people are born with that can't be arbitrarily taken away. Importantly, these natural rights do not come from a government, but rather belong to all people. The next thing Jefferson says is that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. This is the social contract. The purpose of governments is to secure the unalienable or natural rights of the people. We give up some freedom by living under a government, but only so much as is necessary for the protection of people's rights. But popular sovereignty is in that sentence as well. Governments derive their powers from the consent of the governed. Similarly, whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it and to institute new government. Again, it's clear that people are the source of governmental power. On the argument essay, the Declaration is perfect to use to argue for individual rights and civil liberties, since Jefferson describes a limited government that draws its power from the people. So you can also easily use it to support democracy and even more specifically, participatory democracy. And you can also use it to support social movements as a method for people to affect policy change. Okay, next up, the Articles of Confederation. You probably know that it established a very weak federal government and was viewed as a failure before being replaced by the Constitution. But let's get more specific. The Articles are based on the idea of state sovereignty, meaning that states had the ultimate right to rule. Each state had the ultimate authority to make its own decisions and even go against the federal government. It established a very weak federal government with only a single branch, just legislative, no executive, no judiciary. Congress was unicameral and each state had one vote. Amending the Articles had to be unanimous, and with no executive branch, it couldn't enforce laws. Congress did have a few powers, mostly to do with foreign policy. They could declare war, make treaties and alliances. They could also coin and borrow money, but that's about it. Congress couldn't tax either the states or the people directly, and it also couldn't regulate interstate commerce. And even with the powers Congress did have, states still had more power. They could also coin money and create currencies, and could even refuse to recognize federal treaties. Now let's get into the debate over the ratification of the Constitution, starting with the opposition paper, Brutus number 1. Okay, so Brutus is totally opposed to the new Constitution. He predicts that it will destroy the 13 small republics and replace them with a tyrannical central government. He argues that the Necessary and Proper Clause and the Supremacy Clause will give the federal government absolute and uncontrollable power. The Necessary and Proper Clause will be used by Congress to justify the passing of almost any law, and the Supremacy Clause will be used to annihilate whatever small power has been reserved to the states, reducing the nation to a single government, leaving the states powerlessly irrelevant. The Constitution giving Congress the power to tax leaves him apoplectic, warning that taxation is the great engine of oppression and tyranny. Just as troubling, it also allows for the establishment of standing armies during peacetime, and Brutus pulls no punches, saying that this will lead to nothing less than the destruction of liberty. As for what Brutus wants, it's clear that he prefers to keep the 13 small republics as sovereign governments. The more political decisions that can be made locally by the people, the better. He points out that if the republic is too large, the people won't really be represented. And he says this means we don't really have a republic. Though he doesn't explicitly endorse a democracy over a republic, his preference for small republics and local control of policy indicates that he's sympathetic to the idea, certainly more than Hamilton and Madison. So you can definitely use Brutus to argue for participatory democracy, where people are much more actively involved in policymaking. And Brutus opposes all this centralized power because ultimately he's most concerned about individual liberties, which he's convinced the new federal government will destroy. So use Brutus to argue against governmental power and for individual rights. Next, in Federalist number 10, James Madison defends the Constitution, and the AP exam absolutely loves this essay. In a single sentence, here's Madison's main point. A large republic is the best way to control the negative effects of factions. Keyword, control, not eliminate. Factions are groups of people, and Madison's worried about majority groups that want to harm other citizens or society at large. He's very opposed to democracy, saying that in a pure democracy, majority factions will tyrannize and oppress minorities. This is because there's nothing to check the power of the majority in a democracy. You vote, the majority always wins, and then it can do anything it wants. So one important way to use Federalist number 10 is to use it to argue against democracy. He goes so far as to describe democracy as mob rule, saying that democracies are spectacles of turbulence and contention. They can't provide security or protect people's property rights. So the only solution is a republican form of government. This means you can use Federalist 10 to support anything having to do with republics and having representatives make policy on behalf of the people. He says that representatives will be people who are wiser and care more about what's good for the nation in the long term, so they'll be less likely to oppress minorities than people in a democracy would be if they were voting directly on policies themselves. So a large republic is the best way to control the negative effects of factions. When he says large republic, that's him supporting a stronger central or federal government. So definitely use Federalist 10 to take the federal side in any prompt on states versus federal power. The reason he supports a large republic over a small republic is interesting. He says that in a larger republic there will be more factions, and the more factions or groups there are, the relative power of each faction will be diluted. This lets us use Federalist 10 to support pluralist democracy, which is all about group-based decision making and having multiple groups competing for power. Next up, Federalist 51 is all about checks and balances. Madison highlights some challenges when establishing a government, including the fact that people who have some power will crave even more power. So he says that ambition must be made to counteract ambition. In other words, start by separating the powers of government into 3 distinct branches, and then give each a little bit of power and influence over the other 2 branches. Each branch is going to try to get more power for itself, but if every branch is trying to increase their power, they'll also be sure to protect their own powers from being violated by the other 2 branches. And in this way, the branches will keep each other from getting too powerful. The reason we have to worry about any person or part of government getting too much power is artfully described by Madison when he says, if men were angels, no government would be necessary. And if angels were doing the governing, we wouldn't need to worry about having a limited government either, since they wouldn't abuse their power. But people will definitely abuse their power if given the chance. Madison says the problem is you must first enable the government to control the governed, but you must also oblige it to control itself. This is why it's so vital to maintain a limited government, which Madison says is only possible with separation of powers and checks and balances. The paper also briefly touches on federalism as another way to limit the power of any single part of government, resulting in a double security to the rights of the people. Use this essay to support limited government, separation of powers, checks and balances, and federalism. Any prompt about 2 branches is perfect, and you can use Federalist 51 whether your position is for or against a particular check. Moving on, next up, Federalist 70 is all about the presidency. I'll cut to the chase. The main idea of this paper is that it's better to have a unitary or single executive as opposed to a plural executive. Hamilton's argument is twofold. A single president is more effective, but also is more constrained by public opinion than a plural executive. He argues that a single president will be more decisive, more energetic, and will lead to a steady administration of laws, the protection of property, and the protection of liberty. He also says that some of the most important qualities in the executive are vigor and expedition, which is a way of saying strength and decisiveness, being able to act quickly. To Hamilton, there's no benefit of the president acting slowly or weakly, and the need to act quickly is especially true in times of crisis, war, or disaster. As a quick aside, Hamilton points out that Congress, on the other hand, needs to act slowly and with deliberation when making legislation. Hamilton's other argument is that a single president will be more accountable to the people because public opinion will be a more effective check. His reasoning is that with just one president, the people will know exactly who to blame and punish for either wrongdoing or incompetence. And since the president has to be more worried about public opinion, individual rights will be better protected. Our last Federalist paper is Federalist 78, and it's all about the judiciary. Hamilton is arguing in favor of giving life tenure to federal judges to maintain an independent judiciary that can exercise the power of judicial review. Let's review all 3 parts of that claim. Federal judges have their jobs for life, subject to good behavior. And Hamilton says that this is the best way to have a steady, upright, and impartial administration of the laws. Hamilton assures us that the judiciary is beyond comparison the weakest branch of government and that it lacks the ability to be a threat to liberty. The only way the judiciary could be dangerous is if it weren't independent. If Congress or the president dominated the court, our liberty would be greatly threatened. We need to have an independent judiciary because otherwise it wouldn't do anything to limit the 2 stronger branches. So the court must have the power of judicial review. Hamilton says it's the duty of the court to declare all acts contrary to the Constitution void. Without this, all the rights and privileges in the Constitution would amount to nothing. If Congress passed a law contrary to the Constitution, it would imply that Congress was above the Constitution, and this defeats the whole notion of limited government. As he says, no legislative act that's contrary to the Constitution can be valid. So the court has to defend the Constitution against Congress by using judicial review to strike down laws that are unconstitutional. To reiterate, federal judges must have life tenure to maintain an independent judiciary that exercises the power of judicial review in defense of the Constitution and limited government. And last up, our most unique document, a letter from Birmingham Jail. I'm going to go big picture first. Martin Luther King Jr. is calling for the fulfillment of the lofty ideals within the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution to finally include everybody. Think of all men are created equal, or life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, or that we the people are the source of government power. This letter is a declaration that those words have not been fulfilled and demands that this change right now. In the essay, King establishes the necessity of protest and direct citizen action to get policies changed. We can apply his words not just to the civil rights movement of the 1960s, but to modern social movements as well. The purpose of nonviolent direct action like sit-ins and marches is to create such a crisis and tension in the community that it can no longer be ignored, it simply must be addressed. Another key line is when he states that freedom is never voluntarily given by the oppressor, it must be demanded by the oppressed. Clearly, citizen action is required. Another great line is when he observes that human progress never rolls in on wheels of inevitability. It comes through tireless efforts and persistent work. Again, the point is clear. There's no alternative to direct action by citizens to make change happen. It won't just happen. King also defends civil disobedience, intentionally breaking some laws as a method of peaceful protest. He confronts a key question. How can you advocate breaking some laws and obeying others? It's very simple. There are just laws and there are unjust laws, and an unjust law is no law at all. And since an unjust law is no law at all, it's simply not something that citizens have any obligation to follow. In fact, when the law is unjust, the right thing to do is to violate it. One last time, King reminds us that injustice must be rooted out by strong, persistent, and determined action. So on an argument essay, you should find it very easy to connect this document to social movements and participatory democracy more broadly. And that's it. That's everything you need to know about the required documents. You are going to do absolutely amazing on this AP exam. And until next time, this has been a Money production. Thanks again for watching and for all your support. I appreciate it so much. If you're interested in great study materials, check out the Ultimate Review Packet for 3 practice exams, FRQs, tons of multiple choice practice, amazing study guides, and I will see you in the next video.